Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to return to Gotland for the first time in quite a little while actually, and that of course is the larger of the two islands off the east coast of Sweden. There must be about 12 or so different breweries there now. There seems to be a lot of craft beer activity. They've got their own beer festival and stuff too. But the beers I've tried from Gotland so far have been really good. This particular brewery is one that I first introduced on the channel around 8-9 months ago, something like that, and it was a breakfast stout that I tried from them, which it turned out to be really quite nice. I was going through a bit of a phase of coffee stouts at that time, and the breakfast stout proved to be a really quite nice beer. And this was one that when I saw it released on the Juldrika list on the 1st of November through Systembolaget here in Sweden, this was one that just really caught my interest for a couple of reasons. So for this review then, we are going to do my second review from Alskute Farm and Brewery, who are from a little place called Levide in the sort of southwestish part of Gotland actually. This particular beer is called the Vow of Silence, and it's a Belgian style quadrupel coming in at 10% ABV. The main reason that this beer kind of struck my interest was that you don't see too many Swedish breweries having a go at quadrupels. I've seen a few tripels and things like that, but I've only had one quadrupel, and I think that was from Eskilstuna Ölkultur, if I remember correctly. So you really don't see that many Swedish breweries trying this style. So to see this one released as the Christmas beer from these guys, it shows a little bit of ambition, because most Swedish breweries will release either a barley wine or an imperial stout. Not a lot of them will have a go at some of the Belgian beers like this. So kudos to Alskute for releasing this, and I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. So hopefully it's another good beer from them, and we'll need to do give me some recommendations in the comment section below for other Swedish brewed quadrupels as well. I think that would be a very interesting thing to look at for the channel. When it comes to Belgian beer, for me it's all about the Belgian blondes, the tripels and the quadrupels as well. So yeah, we'll see how we get on with this one. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Alskute Farm and Brewery before. No doubt I will add some more in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the Alskute Farm and Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So Alskute Farm and Brewery is owned by Bruce Todd and his wife Linda, and they moved back to Gotland with his family in 2012. So he'd been homebrewing for a good number of years from what I understand, but he officially started the brewery up in 2017, and it's based in a converted tractor shed on their farm in Levide, which, like I mentioned to you, is kind of in the southwesternish part of Gotland. There is that little tip of Gotland that goes quite far south compared to the rest of the island. But the interesting thing about this brewery is that they produce their own hops. They started with a modest plantation of only around 200, but there's evidence that there's been hops produced on this site since around 1734. And the brewery has also produced their own Gotlandsdrike as well, which is a local type of beer. It's kind of really smoky. It's a really nice kind of smoky, thick, bready type beer actually. I think they put a little bit of juniper and stuff in it as well, and some pine needles or something like that. Juniper, it's like a smoked junipery wood type beer from what I remember. So hopefully these guys do their own version of that, and I can review that for you on the channel at some point as well. But they do have a series of beer that is called the Gotland Hop Series, which uses all of their own hops. Mainly it's Cascade and Magnum varieties that they're producing, but they do have a few of their own kind of unique things as well. So hopefully I can have a little look at that beer series, learn a little bit about the hops they're producing as well, and talk about that in some future videos too. But as of November 2019, when I'm filming this review for you, according to Untappd, they've produced around 26 or 27 different types of beers. So lots of different things you can choose from these guys. There seems to be a good variety of different styles as well, but this is the one that they released for Christmas of 2019. I'm not sure if they did this back in 2018 as well, but this is just one, as I say, that really kind of caught my interest, and hopefully it's a nice take on the Belgian style quadrupel. I did enjoy the breakfast stout that I had from them before, so hopefully as I say, this is another very good beer. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Alskute Farm and Brewery for the moment. That was all I was really able to find out about them actually, but hopefully there's a little bit more comes out on them the next time I do a review, and like I say, we'll have a look at their Gotland Hop Series in the next video, I think. So yeah, if you want to learn more, check out the Brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course if you're interested in the different beers that they do, you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages for all of that information. So yeah, let's get on with the actual tasting of this beer then. So as you can see, this one, it has very similar artwork to the other beers you'll find from Alskute. Their little symbol down there on the bottom of the label is just like that, quite snazzy I have to say. It does say that this is the winter edition. It says on the side here, Vow of Silence is a beer inspired by monastic brewing. Monastic silence is a spiritual practice recommended to help achieve enlightenment. So yeah, I think usually, when monks go into the seminary or the brotherhood or whatever you want to call it, they usually have to take a vow of silence for like a few months or something like that. I've heard of it, some of them actually doing it for about a year and things like that. So yeah, kind of interesting that. But yeah, you can see plain red bottle cap on this one. It would be cool if they did a red bottle cap with the thing on it. I'm sure actually the last one I had might have had that. But yeah, it should be a really interesting beer, this one. You can see just from looking through the bottle, this one is going to be a bit of a beast. But it says best before the 1st of the 10th 2020, but in fairness I think you could probably age this beer quite a bit longer than that, but maybe it's not it's maybe not bottle conditioned or anything like that, or I don't know. But yeah, they're saying best before 2020, but usually with a quad, you can age those for a good few years. But the question is, when does it become, how long do you age it for? That's the obvious question with a quadruple. Maybe I can do a little bit of a project on that at some point if I ever live in Belgium. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The Vow of Silence, a 10% Belgian style quadruple from a farm on Levide, on Gotland here in Sweden. Oh yeah, look at that. They've definitely been using some Belgian yeast in this. There's no two doubts about that. One of the things you always have to usually watch with Belgian beers is that they don't explode when you open them up because of the bottle conditioning. But I think this beer, just going by the way the carbonations behave there, I'm pretty sure this beer has been bottle conditioned. In terms of its colour, if we hold it up to the light, this one I think is one of the darker quadruples that I've ever come across. It's got a lovely, very dark sort of rosewoody, mahogany kind of colour. If you put the light through this beer, you will see a nice ruby edge to it actually. You could see the head when it came out was about a half finger, and I would describe the head as being a sort of light kind of beigey colour. It's not the darkest of heads you're going to come across, but that colour of head, that nice sort of beigey type thing that you can see there, that is fairly kind of standard for a Belgian style quadruple. But yeah, I think this is one of the darker quadruples that I've come across. But that said, it has been a while actually since I've reviewed an example of this particular beer style, so I might be telling you lies. It might just be fairly standard, but a lovely dark kind of rosewoody and ruby-ish colour to this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass at the bottom there, but you can see quite a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of the head there. Belgian beer does tend to be fairly well carbonated actually, and I do suspect, just based on how this one behaved when it came out, they probably have used a little bit of a Belgian yeast in this one. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and see how we got on. Nothing overly surprising about the appearance of this one. Oh yeah, that comes across really nicely. The other thing about this, the reason this is so impressive for them to try this beer, this is a very difficult style to get right. Quite often breweries will have a go at the quadruple, and it just doesn't come across the same way as it would in Belgium. And the one that I had from Eskilstuna Ulkulter, that was a really nice example of the style, but the problem was they had filtered it, and I think that took the thickness away of some of the things actually, some of the more bready kind of yeasty notes actually, so it didn't feel quite as thick, but it had all the flavour that you would expect, besides a little bit of the breadiness. But this one, to me, in terms of its aroma and stuff, this comes across really as pretty damn authentic, I have to say. So where to start with this one then? You can smell that lovely big kind of brown bready doughy sort of yeast kind of thing in this beer. The brown sugars are really present as well. It comes across with quite a sweet caramel, but at the same time it's got a little bit of a kind of toasty quality to it. Definitely some light biscuity notes in there as well. It almost, you do get that almost kind of brown sugar banana type note out of this too. There is definitely a little bit of a kind of banana-y note coming out of this beer, which is interesting. Obviously it's not quite as pungent as you might expect with, say, like, you know, a Belgian blonde or a tripel or something like that. It's maybe just the type of candy sugar, because quite often with these quadrupels and tripels, breweries will add a little bit of kind of candy sugar into them, and that's kind of, it's usually a tool to help control the mouthfeel actually, because Belgian beers, they're always quite you know, they're always quite oily, but at the same time they maintain a level of wetness, and they've got that kind of crisp carbonation quite often as well. So I've got the feeling that there will be a bit of that candied sugar in this one. You can smell a little bit of that here, but beyond that, you've definitely got some nice woody and nutty undertones to the beer. It almost comes across as being a little bit cakey, to be honest with you. It smells a little bit like Christmas pudding, and the reason I know that is because my dad used to absolutely love the stuff. I didn't like it at all, but my mum always used to make my dad Christmas pudding for his birthday cake, because he loved it that much. So I've got a really, this beer, the aroma of it really reminds me of my mum's Christmas pudding that she used to make for my dad's birthday. So yeah, it's got a really nice, just cakey backbone to it, some nice woody notes, bit of a brown bready quality in there, a thick kind of yeasty note, some toasty brown sugars, like I say, but at the same time they're not overly toasty, they come across as quite sweet, a little bit of a biscuity note, woody and nutty undertones. So yeah, everything that you would kind of expect in the sort of malt and yeasty base of this beer, if you like. Overall, I'd say this one, it has a good balance actually. It doesn't really lean more towards the bready side of things or towards the brown sugar side of things. The breadiness I think is perhaps a little bit more noticeable, but I think everything is quite well balanced in this beer. This one comes off as really complex in terms of its aroma. It really does come across as very authentic. If I had to compare it to what you know, what quadrupel it's actually closest to, that would be a very difficult task. But as it stands, you know, this is a really nice smelling Belgian quadrupel. The first one, of course, was the La Trappe quadrupel from Brewery de Koningshoven, which is, of course, the Dutch Trappist brewer, the old Dutch Trappist brewer. There is another one there now as well, Zundert, I think it's called. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things with this beer, then you can pick up a little bit of earthiness. It's quite a mild earthiness though, and as I've always told you, Belgian hops are a little bit more, they're a little bit in between the German noble hops and the English hops. They've got a little bit of a stronger earthiness, a little bit of the herbal qualities that you'd expect of the English hops, but the grassiness is a little bit more kind of akin to the German hops in my opinion. So you can smell a little bit of that in here. There is a bit of an earthy presence, a little bit of a herbal quality as well from the hops, but you can also get just a little bit of the grassiness, but the fruitiness comes out of this beer really quite nicely. So for me, there's a good bit of a blackcurrant blackberry sort of thing, but when you take the beer in a little bit more deeply, you're also getting some of those kind of datey, pruny kind of notes, and also a good little bit of a juicy, figgy quality actually as well out of this beer. So as I said, this has got a really kind of complex aroma to it. Take a little bit of time and enjoy it. The quadrupels are one of the best styles that you're going to find in terms of the aroma, so probably when it comes to me reviewing these, I spend a bit more time on the aroma than I would compared to some of the other styles. Scotch ales are another one, and sometimes Doppelbocks can be quite like that as well. Weizenbocks are very good for that also. But yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy that aroma, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. So this one is the Vow of Silence, a Belgian style quadrupel coming in at 10% ABV from Alskute Farm and Brewery in Levide, in Gotland, one of the big islands just off the east coast of Sweden. Hopefully I can go and visit there next summer or something like that. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. Oh yeah, that's pretty nice actually. What I'll say about this beer is, I get the impression with this one, you are going to have to take a few sips of this and just, you know, let your mouth adjust to what's going on here. But I'll say straight away, that's a really solid Belgian quadruple. They've done a nice job of this one actually, so thumbs up to Alskute for this one. They've done, you know, as I say, a difficult style to pull off, but I think they've definitely more than acquitted themselves. Let's say that it's really this beer is pretty nice. You know, kudos to them for even thinking to try this, especially when they're only like 2 years old. That's impressive. So yeah, with this beer then, it does remind me a bit of the one that I had from Eskilstuna. It's got everything you'd expect in terms of the flavour. It's just the way that it comes out is a little bit different. Like for example, the kind of bready, doughy qualities, they come out a little bit more in the aftertaste. And now that I think about it, the beer that this reminds me of a little bit is actually the Castile Donker. It really, this beer, it has the darkness of the brown sugars in this one, and you know, the fact it feels a little bit more. It doesn't have as big a bready thickness, if you like, as some of the quadruples that you're going to come across. It really does remind me a little bit of the Castile Donker now that I think about it. So if you like that beer, I think you will quite enjoy this one. But yeah, they've done this really well. So, you know, if they can produce a quadrupel like this, I'd be very curious to see how they do with like a Belgian blonde or a tripel or something. You know, a doppelbock and a Scotch ale would also be an interesting thing to see from this brewery. But solid effort, I have to say. So let's try and break the flavour of this one down then and see how we get on. So straight away with this beer, you're going to feel a sort of almost woody quality. That blankets the middle of your palate there, and it lingers there until you go into the aftertaste, and it really, that kind of forms the backbone of the beer for me. The further that you go into the aftertaste as well, you are going to get a little bit of that brown bready, doughy, kind of yeasty quality. That kind of sits in the middle of your palate too, which is really nice. But yeah, it takes a little while for the doughy qualities of this beer to come out, and you're finding they actually do come out a little bit more kind of further forward on the tongue. I would actually even be tempted to say that this beer comes across as a little bit more cakey rather than doughy and yeasty, actually. And it's kind of interesting, that sort of Christmas puddingy type flavour that I was expecting out of this beer. It's almost like if you go to the kind of front, if you almost just kind of sort of bend your tongue like this a little bit, the cakey flavours come out on the part that you can bend your tongue forward like that. The back of the palate in the centre is more sort of woody, and some of the brown sugars there, the brown sugars come out really in the very centre of the palate, and it comes across as a very sort of dark, treacly type brown sugar. It's not quite as sweet as I was expecting from the aroma. It's definitely a bit darker than that, but in fairness, as I said, the colour of this beer is quite dark, and often that depends both on the malts that you use, but it also depends on how long your boil is, because the longer the boil of the beer, the darker the colour is going to be, because the sugars caramelise a little bit more. But of course that's not the only factor, as I mentioned. But I suspect that this beer, just on the basis of how it's coming out, I think they've done a fairly long boil on this one. I can't remember if the standard boil is longer than 90 minutes on a quadrupel recipe, but I do suspect this is a fairly long boil beer. But yeah, the brown sugars, they come across as quite dark in the beginning, and you'll feel the middle of your palate just kind of sweetens up after you take a little sip of the beer, and as you move further out from the centre, the darker brown sugars I think stay in the middle, but as you move further out from the palate, it gradually evolves to be a little bit more of a sweeter caramel, and then eventually by the time you're sort of reaching the edge of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of biscuity, a little bit like a sort of McVitie's digestive type thing actually, or a caramel wafer, something like that. So yeah, very dark brown sugars in the centre of your palate, and then as you gradually move out towards the edges of the tongue, it's more sweet, caramelly and biscuity, and then you get the woody undertones pushing their way up as well. If you go to the centre of your palate and then move forward on the tongue, you'll eventually kind of find it's behind where the fruits would come out, but you've got a little bit of a nutty kind of undertone to this beer as well. But when you move to the sides of that sort of nutty quality, that's where you get the kind of cakey notes out of this beer that I was talking about earlier. But yeah, this is a really nice example. The thing I would say about this beer, when you drink more of this, it really does, it sort of sweetens up a little bit. And you know, it comes across, when your mouth is still getting used to this, it comes across as quite dark, to be honest with you. But then the more and more you drink of it, the brown sugars sort of lighten up a little bit, and they really just become sweeter. This is a beer that definitely kind of grows on you a little bit, this one, so be prepared that when you first try it, it's not going to be the same as when you finish it. And I don't know if it's anything to do with the oxygen going into it, of course, when it's out in the glass, but it's probably something to do with your palate just adjusting a little bit too. But the way the centre of your palate goes together on this one is really nice. But this is not the most doughy and bready sort of quadrupel that you're going to get. This one is actually quite similar to the one that I had from Eskilstuna, the Eskilstuna quadrupel. It's quite similar to that, except it's a bit darker in terms of its brown sugars, but it sweetens up really quite nicely. It does remind me of that Castile Donker that I was talking about earlier. There is something about this beer that really just reminds me of that, and that's no bad thing, because that is a good beer. In terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of, there is a little bit of earthiness there. You can feel as you move further forward a little bit of a herbal quality. As you reach the front corners of the palate, you can detect like a teeny little bit of a sort of floral note to the beer as well. But round the very front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. Behind the front curve of the tongue, of course, that's where you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. But yeah, on that front part of your palate, like I said, just behind where the fruits come out, you do get that almost Christmas puddingy, cakey type thing. It's almost a little bit sort of phenolic, to be honest with you, a little bit like Cavonia or something like that. The phenolic qualities are these sort of fruity, cough syrupy, medicinal kind of things. But as you come further forward on the tongue from that, you really get a kind of datey, pruny type quality to the beer, and then as you move further forward on the tongue, it gradually evolves to be a little bit more sort of figgy and juicy, and then right on the tip of the palate, the further you go into the aftertaste, it evolves to be a little bit more like kind of black curranty and blackberry sort of thing that comes out of the beer. There's almost a little bit of a kind of sultana type quality to this beer as well. You will notice there is something in the middle of the palate there that it's got a little bit of a banana-ish quality, like that sort of banana-y bubblegum thing. There's a little bit of that in this beer the further you go into the aftertaste as well. So that's kind of an interesting point to make about this beer also. But I really like how this one goes together. It's a really nice example of the quadrupel style. So thumbs up to Alskute for this one. This is a difficult style to pull off, and they've more than sort of acquitted themselves or done themselves justice, however you want to say it. This is a nice take on the style, so I really hope that they keep on with this and try a few more Belgian beers. Actually, that would be really cool. So yeah, try this one. If you enjoy this style, I think you are going to be quite impressed with it. I will say the same thing about this one as I did with the Eskilstuna quadrupel though. I think one of the things with this beer is that they filtered it, so it does actually, it feels a little bit cleaner than you would normally expect a Belgian example of this style to be, and that's an interesting point to make about it. Granted, as I say, it's been a while since I've reviewed a Belgian quadrupel, but I remember them just feeling a little bit thicker in terms of the sort of doughy, bready, yeasty things, and I do wonder if that's down to the fact that the Swedish ones that I've tried have been filtered. But do let me know your own opinions on that in the comments section below. I think this is a nice example, but it just, again, it feels a little bit clean, but it could be the water as well. You know, Swedish water is very good quality, and a place like Gotland you are going to get good water as well. So minor thing about this. But on that note, let's look at the mouthfeel of this beer. So yeah, I think it's fair to describe this one as being at the bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth in this one. It's a big oily mouthfeel, but at the same time it does have that little bit of wetness that you would expect of a Belgian beer. And the carbonation in this I don't think is quite as active as you might find in a Belgian example of this style. But the malt base and the yeasty qualities, there is a bit of darkness initially, but like I mentioned to you, this beer really sweetens up the more that you drink of it. It has got a smoothness underneath. It's mainly a woody undertone that this beer has actually, but I would say the malt base is mainly kind of dark and sort of toasty and treacly, but then as you move further out, as I mentioned, it gets a little bit sweeter. So the malt base and the way the yeasty notes in this beer kind of evolve, that's the real sort of crux of this beer and what makes it really interesting. The hoppy side of things, you know, I think you'd be lucky to get about 15 IBUs out of this beer, something like that. Some quadrupels and tripels they don't even add hops to at all, so I would think, you know, you're talking about maybe 10, 15 IBUs out of this beer at most. On the fruity side of things, it's definitely got a little bit of that sort of phenolic cough syrupy kind of thing, but it does get nice and juicy the further you go into the aftertaste. But overall, a really nice example of the Belgian style quadrupel. A little bit cleaner than you might expect from a Belgian brewed version of this beer, but Alskute have done a really nice job with this, as Eskilstuna Ölkultur did before. So yeah, really cool to find another Swedish example of this particular style. And do give me other recommendations in the description below. I'd love to try more Swedish tripels and quadrupels, Belgian blondes as well. Swedish examples of Belgian blondes would be nice too. So yeah, let's leave it at that. I take my hat off to Alskute for this one. Very difficult style to get right, and they've more than done themselves justice with this. So if you get the chance to try this beer, I highly recommend that you do. I think they've done an absolutely solid job with this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Alskute Farm and Brewery. Do give me some other Gotland beer recommendations as well, because I know there's a few of the breweries that I haven't reviewed anything from over there yet. But it'd be great to go over there and visit at some point. I've heard it's really nice during the summer with the medieval festival and things like that, so maybe you'll see a few out and about videos over on Gotland next time. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Vow of Silence, a Belgian style quadrupel coming in at 10% ABV from the Alskute Farm and Brewery on Levide in the sort of southwestish part of Gotland here in Sweden. Until the next time, Slangen just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slangen, skål, make sure you check out this beer. Cheers.